just introduce yourself, your name, your position, and where you work?
You bet. My name is Matthew Kline. I am the head of digital and social at The Volume, but for just Colin Coward's media company.
Very nice. And so tell me a little bit about you and your career and how you wound up at the volume.
Yeah, for sure. So I started right out of college at ESPN as a lowly PA in studio, doing all the normal stuff you do as a PA, VO unit, show logging, prompting, highlight cutting, all that. Did that for a couple of years, really honed my video editing skills. And I got transitioned. I got switched over to the social team at that time, and I was the kid at 23 that like I did not. And this is before like this huge social explosion. This is kind of like early on. I was the kid that like didn't like my friends forced me to have a Facebook early, like I in college, and like I created a Twitter that I like used to track trades in sports, but I never actually tweeted anything or anything like that. Which is still kind of true. I keep a low profile on the socials since I do it every day for my job. But that's so I kind of was coming into it with an open mind, but didn't necessarily know exactly what I was doing early on. But that's where everything really clicked for me. I got really lucky. I had some tremendous bosses who I am still very close with to this day, who truly served as my mentors and taught me everything I know. I'm gonna miss a few, but I'll do a few quick shout outs. Like Steve Braband was my first boss. He's now an executive of digital at WWE. Ashley Braband was an executive at Omaha. Worked for her. Michael Buckland is now a senior vice president at Fox Sports. Katie Daly, Mike Foss. These are, they're still at ESPN. Gabe Goodwin has his own production company now, but just in those next few years, just soaked up knowledge from them and learned things in the social space as much as possible. And over those next couple of years, learned obviously about social best practices and all stuff like that. Like I started on the Sports Nation handle, worked on Baseball Tonight, RIP to that handle, worked on the NFL handle, worked on Sports Center, kind of just worked across everything, whatever was needed. And then we actually launched the first social video team inside of ESPN, where we did such revolutionary things as put text on video. And with my background in studio, I transitioned over to do that. Did that for a little while, where again, like that kind of hit another level for me, where we really started learning about how to produce shows and content for social media that are more than just a graphic or a tweet or a Facebook post or whatever, not from a show, right? Original social content. Right. And that led to my working very closely in producing as we launched the SportsCenter Snapchat show for the first time at ESPN. And I produced that for a couple of years before I was promoted to take over that entire team as director of digital at ESPN. Oversaw the Snapchat team, oversaw a lot of our vertical video storytelling and shows, helped develop and launch a couple of ESPN Plus shows. So a lot across the digital and social space at ESPN. And then about a little more than 2 years ago now, my former boss, Steve Braband, gave me a call and said, "Hey, I got these guys at the Volume and they're doing some cool stuff and they're looking for someone to come in and like create and set up their social and YouTube." And at the time I was really happy with ESPN, and I didn't necessarily see myself leaving, but I trust Steve and started having these conversations. And Steve introduced me to Logan Swaim, and Logan and I hit it off immediately, like right away. First conversation, I went from being very skeptical, like, oh, this might be a thing. So Logan and I hit it off. I went through a couple more rounds of interviews, spent a month or two talking to them, and ultimately made the decision to leave ESPN and come here to the Volume. And it's been such an incredible ride for the first 2 years. So came in and was really immediately tasked with, let's build the social team. When I came in, it was very podcast focused. So, let's ramp up YouTube. Let's really ramp up our video distribution across all platforms, across all channels. And that was my task, and that was my mission for the first 6 months. And then all of a sudden Draymond is going on a NBA championship run in the middle of my first year, and we're strategizing around the best way to execute that. Um, you know, like immediate podcasts after playoff games all of a sudden became the norm as people were clearly liking that. Um, so yeah, and it was just a wild first year. All of a sudden you think you're catching a breath, and then boom, Shannon Sharp's here.
Yeah.
And we're ramping him up, creating new shows for him. And this is obviously nothing to say of all the other 15 shows that we have here, which are tremendous, and working with Kline and working with the talented, people here. But I'm rambling a bit now. But that's kind of my story of the last, a little over, geez, I'm getting old, a little over 12 years now. I spent almost a decade at ESPN, a couple of years here at Volume, and yeah, it's been a ton of fun, wild ride, but wouldn't change it for anything.
No, it's awesome. So when Logan brings you in and
Yeah.
is basically saying you're starting from scratch,
Yeah.
based on everything you learned, your first thought was what? Like, what was that introductory strategy kind of look like?
Yeah, so like I will say, like in our conversations about me potentially taking the job, we had kind of started to have these conversations about like, well, if I was to do it, what would it look like? And the first thing for me that immediately came to mind was, I knew we would ramp up YouTube. That was somewhat in progress when I got here, but we knew we wanted to do a big pivot to video. Now I wouldn't even say a pivot to video. We wanted to incorporate more video into our production strategy and process. So for me, my first thought process was, we want to maximize our reach, maximize our revenue, maximize our relevance. So at the beginning, I was worried mostly about number one, and that was reach. How do we expand our audience in the biggest way possible? And early on, for me, that meant turning our social team into a content distribution machine. How are people going to know that these awesome podcasts exist if they don't exist on social, if you can't consume them in multiple ways on multiple platforms? So that was the first thing, was really digging in, working with the existing team to start cranking out more social cuts, higher end social cuts, that are a little bit faster, pacier, have texts and graphics, and really move, really as a simply as a marketing mechanism, to get people to understand that, hey, you should consume these full length podcasts. But, and again, this is a big way of how I came up. I think the biggest difference for me was it's not just a marketing play. This is like social content is content. Show content on social should be valued just as much as a view on YouTube or a listen on the podcast, because it has the value of really ingraining itself in the culture, which we saw obviously a lot with Draymond, a lot with Shannon. Colin is in that space. Richard Sherman is in that space. And we've been able to, to grow the profile of other people by really getting them out, into that space with best practices and high numbers. So that was step one for me is, how do we maximize our reach? How do we maximize our audience? How do we reach the most amount of people possible? And for me, that was, again, just turning our social into a content distribution machine, in addition to still doing, original social content, being a part of the live window on NFL Sundays, on big NBA nights, creating content around that. So it was a pretty holistic strategy all around. Again, I don't want to leave out the YouTube portion of it, which was obviously huge, but that was big too. We went from primarily being focused on the audio version of our podcasts to, equal weight. How are we, optimizing our video for both YouTube and social? How are we packaging it? Are we doing enough breakout clips, of single topics or multiple topics on YouTube to get the most out of every single show? And again, I know I spoke a lot at you there, but
Yeah.
like really wanted to hit the ground running. So that ramp up of video and putting that team together that could do that was really our focus early on.
Yeah, no doubt. So tell me a little bit about the team, how many people you have working with you and what you're kind of looking for when you are building up that team.
Yeah. I should say like our team is really like the skill sets are really diverse. So like I would say, the social and YouTube team is about 10 to 15 people.
Mhm.
We obviously have a team of producers that work on the shows, and APs and audio producers and all that are I think our entire team is probably around 50 or so folks, including senior staff. Um, again, for me, I think there are two. That's probably not true. There's two or three big things that I look for when I'm looking to staff up my team. One is, do you have a unique perspective? Do you have a voice that is going to come through when you are producing a video, right? I think there are a lot of people that are out there that can sit down and set it in and set it out, export the video and say, here it is. But what creativity are what creative juices are you bringing to the edit? How are you elevating it? How are you taking a conversation about LeBron James and making it appealing to everyone, incorporating maybe a cultural reference, working in a Photoshop? So again, how people's brains work. Are they bringing a different perspective? Are they creative? Can they be additive to the content? That's one thing. And then two, for me, again, like everyone on my team needs to be collaborative. And I would say that's not just true of my team, that's true of everyone at the volume. There's never really a day where you only work on one thing. So you have to be able to work with your show producer. You have to be able to work with the person that's going to end up publishing the content. So your YouTube people, your social, managers. So people that can understand multiple sides, multiple, skill sets of what needs to be done to not just produce the content, but again, to distribute it. That understanding is really important to me. So it's not just like I am, people understand that they are just one piece of the puzzle, and how they work with others to do that and to create the best content is going to make everyone better.
Yeah, no doubt.
So again, those are the two biggest things I look for. But again, I think this is true of any successful company. You got to look for people who are culture setters, right? Like, we want people here that are going to work hard, that are going to, and besides being collaborative, but like be someone that you enjoy working with every day.
Mm.
No one wants to wake up and say, oh man, I have to work with Charlie today. I gotta shoot him a text. Man, I don't want to do that. No, like I want everyone waking up on the team excited to hop into the morning huddle, start exchanging ideas. What are you working on today? Oh, that sounds really cool. Can I help with that? So again, people being culture setters, wanting to work hard, work with the people around them. Again, I think that's a baseline. I almost didn't even say it, but like I think all very successful companies have that. And that's not always the first thing you look for in an interview, especially at a startup where things move fast and we want to hire the people with the best skill set. Again, for me, I want to mix that skill set with people that are going to work hard and work well with others.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about you and your team's relationship to the actual talent and the podcasters, because in many instances they are commanding massive, massive audiences. So how does that intersect with what you guys are doing on social?
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of it depends show to show. Like candidly, our how closely we work with Draymond Green is probably not the same as how closely we work with Jason Timpf. Jason has a little bit more time in his schedule to chat with us about strategy and be communicating with us on a day-to-day basis. Draymond has a few other things going on in his
Just a
life,
little bit.
just one or two. And again, like same with Shannon, same with Colin. So it does vary talent to talent. But I will say we've been extremely lucky. And again, I give Logan a ton of credit for this in terms of who we've gone out and looked for. And it's people who are fully bought in. You'll notice like Draymond is all in on promoting his podcast and, encouraging people to ask questions, tweet at him so that he can talk about it on the pod. Shannon and Chad on Nightcap are fully bought in on promoting, trying to get people to subscribe to the YouTube, trying to get people again into the comment section so they can interact with them on the live show. All of our talent are fully bought in, not only on creating the best content, but maximizing their audience. And what I mean by that is, like, we have obviously, again, this is not necessarily super unique, but like we have a very strong collab strategy with all of our talent on Instagram. Every single one of our talent wants to maximize their growth. So if they collab with us and we collab with them, we're maximizing our pages and their pages to reach the most people. And that's, again, that works for, like, that's going to benefit Draymond and Jason Timpf because their basketball fans are going to want to see more basketball content. That's going to work for John Middlecoff and Colin Coward because people are going to want to see more football content. So they're all bought in not only on, content being shared from our handles, but them sharing content on their handles, participating in giveaways, participating in brainstorms to come up with content, both for the shows and for social. So honestly, working with them has been across the board really, really rewarding. And the time that they, provide to us, I think is hugely valuable. In terms of direct communication, again, varies a little bit talent to talent. Some of the bigger names we need to work with really closely with their producers, or some of them even like Shannon has someone who runs his personal channel. So we talk to him every day. But some of the other talent, again, who might have a little more time, like I'm a huge NBA fan. So like I love catching up with Jason Tim because he and I just talk hoops all the time. So like there is that ability for the content or for the talent that, again, have that time, aren't necessarily working a million hours a week at, being a professional athlete, to work directly with us and communicate directly with us. So again, the buy-in from top to bottom has been phenomenal with our talent.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about how you measure success on social. I mean, you obviously talked about growing the reach, growing
Yeah.
following and engagement is huge. But outside of that, what does success look like, and where have you seen like big wins, if you will?
Yeah. Again, I think it's like the three R's for us: reach, revenue, relevance. Again, reach being number one for a reason, in that if you have a wide reach, you're likely going to drive a good amount of revenue. You're likely going to be pretty relevant. So expanding the reach as much as possible. Again, that goes across platforms. That's YouTube, that's Facebook, that's Instagram, that's Twitter, that's TikTok, that's experimenting on Threads. If when that was a thing for 2 weeks, and if that ever takes off, any platform that is going to be emerging. Snapchat is obviously something I have a ton of experience with. Is we're having conversations right now with them about expanding our content there. Anywhere that we think that we can cultivate and generate an audience is somewhere we're going to go. And then in terms of revenue, again, like we want to drive revenue. Our biggest play there is, again, that's going to be YouTube, and that's largely programmatic ads. But we can, by having a big reach, by being super relevant on social and having all of these clips, we can also upsell our content. Hey, you have a show sponsorship, you're also going to get a social sponsorship with that. You're not going to just get, you're going to get a read on the audio. No, you're going to also get, a video read on the video version of the podcast. You're also going to get a sponsored clip on social that's going to go on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere that people are consuming their content. So maximizing, again, our reach makes us more attractive to those brands so that we can maximize our revenue. And then again, relevance. This is kind of funny. Like when I first started, there were a few people on the social team who, and I totally understand this because I was the same way when I was 23, 24 and first starting out. Everyone got really territorial whenever anyone like picked up our content, right? And maybe they didn't give the perfect credit. For me, I'm like, no, y'all, team, squad, this is a win. This is great. This is what we want. We're getting views. We're not even doing all the work. So for us, again, producing content in a way that cuts through, that's going to get other major outlets to pick it up. And then all of a sudden, we have a clip on First Take. We have a clip on SportsCenter. We have a clip on Undisputed. Having the relevance not only just in the podcast space, but across the sports landscape, for us, that's been hugely rewarding, and something that, again, by maximizing our reach, we're able to maximize our relevance, and have those other brands pick up our content. In terms of most success, some of it is very show to show. I will say YouTube has been a huge success of ours. When I first started, we were under 50,000 subs, and then we were at, I think, 500,000 about a year in. So, again, a huge priority there. We grew, we launched Draymond's Instagram account right around the playoffs of my first year to take advantage of that. That got 100,000 followers within a month, and all of a sudden, that's where a ton of our views are coming from. TikTok has been hugely successful for us. And this is a little bit off topic, but I want to give a shout out. Like, we had someone who started off as an intern, 21 years old, running our TikTok. Now he's built our TikTok into a channel or a platform that has 330,000, a little over that right now, followers. and he's now doing more. Now he's a producer and a talent for us as well. His name's Carson Brever. Nerd Sesh is his show along with Logan Camden. But, you know, empowering people to implement the best practices and do what they know is best on and freeing them to do their best work and steer to their strengths on those platforms has been hugely beneficial for us. And then obviously the most recent success, which saved for last, but certainly not least, has been this ramp up with Shannon over the last month or two. That we obviously inherited. We brought in we brought in Club Shay Shay, hugely successful podcast, over 1 million followers on YouTube. We're to help grow that. But anytime you have someone like Shannon Sharp, the question is, what more can we do? Especially when people went from getting Shannon every morning for a couple hours to, oh, now he has a once a week podcast. Well, there is a gap there for that audience that we can fill. And that's how we built Nightcap with him and Chad Ochocinco. And that's been a wild ride over the last month. But again, like we reached 250,000 subscribers just recently, like right on the 1 month anniversary of launching the YouTube channel. We got to 50,000 on Instagram within a month. We're right around 50,000 on TikTok. So that ramp up has just been amazing. It's gone as good, if not better, than I could have ever imagined. I think in the first month on YouTube, we had about 16 million views and another 60 million monthly views just on social. So that's obviously going to be the headliner. It's going to be he's one of our biggest names. Certainly some of our biggest numbers. But I would say I'm actually going to do one more. I said I was saving Shannon for last, but I'm actually going to do one more. Jason Timp actually might be my favorite success story, just relative to where he started to where he is now. And I want to be very, very, very clear. Jason deserves all the credit in the world. He is immensely talented, incredibly smart, and is an absolute grinder. He busts his butt every day for us. But when he started, he was a Lakers podcaster, blogger, wouldn't say he had the biggest profile. And now he has his own YouTube channel. It's gotten over 20,000 subs in just a couple weeks. His videos in the playoffs are routinely over 100,000 views. His profile across social has risen so much, and that I remember the first time he was like, I was DMing with Kevin Durant the other day. And I was like, I'm sorry, what now? So again, like I think there's different scales to judge it on. Like, I'm never going to take anything away from the success of launching Nightcap with Shannon. But for me, I take equal gratitude and equal excitement, if not even more so sometimes, about seeing of the success of someone like Jason, who he's doing the dream, right? Like, brought him on and we kind of were joking around. He's going to be our Kevin O'Connor, right? Like, he's going to be our #1 basketball or talent, just like Kevin was for Bill at the Ringer. And said it half jokingly. And now I look around, I'm like, yeah, that was the right comp. And we're still working on it. I don't want to say the work is done. Absolutely still growing that. A long way to go. But yeah, like the success of individual shows, different platforms, handles, talent. I don't want to admit, I'm sure there are others I could talk all day across the company of people who have grown and done tremendous work, but those are the ones that immediately come to mind.
Yeah, and I mean, I can hear. I mean, it seems like it's a point of gratification for you, because even though you said you try to keep a lower profile, it's great to be behind the scenes building up, great talent like that.
Yeah, and again, like they deserve all of their flowers. They're doing the work. They're creating the talent. They're who people subscribe to. It's our job to package it in the best way possible, make them look as good as possible, make sure it appeals to as many people as possible. And luckily, we've been able to do that fairly successfully. But again, it takes buy-in from talent, and we have that in spades.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's look around to like outside the volume and around the industry. So we obviously write for a mainly audio driven audience. And I feel like the industry is starting to catch up. Like, they're saying, like, if you create audio content, you get a video camera in there, you're able to generate it into vertical video. That's reels, that's TikToks, all that stuff.
Yep.
You guys do it exceptionally well. What do you feel like in terms of that sort of thing, like pulling podcast clips or pulling like audio clips? What are best practices and where do you feel like other brands still need some work?
Ooh, it's a really good question.
Thank you.
I mean, I think first and foremost, topic selection is always going to be the big thing. You need to know what your audience wants to hear about and talk about. So that's step one. Are you pulling the best possible clip from each episode or the best possible two or three clips, right? Are you identifying the moments within an episode correctly that is going to resonate with your audience? That's number one. Number two, I think pacing is something that we emphasize a lot. I've seen, I'll give a few compliments out to some places I think are doing it really well. I think you see New Heights, Podcast P. I think both of them, if you look at their social cuts, similarly very pacey. They really suck out all of the air. There's a lot of jump cuts. There's text on screen. You can, slide in some cutouts or graphics, incorporate some B-roll or pictures, but keeping things changing on screen so that you're keeping that audience engaged and you're not, losing them to the swipe out. Because like let's be honest, social media audience right now has no patience for anything. I remember when, again, I'll go back. I remember when we were first launching SportsCenter Snapchat and we were having conversations about how best to do it on Snapchat. This has stuck with me for the last 6 years. If something on screen does not change every 3 seconds, you've lost your audience. They have swiped out. So again, that's been a bug in my brain now for 6 years. And I bring that to every single social code we want to talk about. I'm not saying it should move so fast that you can't understand what's going on, you can't track it. I think that's the middle ground that can be a little bit difficult. I think sometimes you see people try to make it go so fast that you don't understand what is happening. But again, keeping the pacing up, the keeping things on screen changing and moving, optimizing it for that. That that's what I think we do really well at. Again, I feel a little bit bad saying that other people in the industry don't do it as well, but I tend to think that we do it as well or better than everyone or anyone, I should say. And then the last thing I would say is that, and this is hard, and again, it depends a bit on your audience. It's similar to what I said at first about, are you choosing the right moments? Are you choosing the right topics? Because for the most part, we talk about sports. So are you taking the right take that people are going to be interested in? Secondarily, potentially like co-primarily, are you showcasing your talent's personality in a way that's going to make people want to continue watching or seek out additional content? Are you making your talent look good? That matters. There's going to be times where you have a really good take, but maybe it's not the best delivery. Now, sometimes there are ways as producers that we can cut around that, make it smooth, make it good. But you don't ever want to put your talent in a position where, maybe it's not their best moment. And I think sometimes in a focus to do the first thing, this is the topic we're doing, even if it wasn't the best delivery, we'll figure it out. I think sometimes that people put their talent in not the best positions. But again, that's something that we think about a lot. And then the last thing that I will say, which is I will say I take a lot of personal pride in this. Had conversations with Draymond about this specifically, along with a lot of our other talent, but we are intentionally not going to be the place that just does the clickbaity headline and pull quote. We're not going to take someone out of context, because then you're not going to want to get a good guest. Like, good guests aren't going to want to come on and talk to Draymond if we make them look bad. If we take them out of context and present what they said in a way that is just not true or not what they meant. So that's something that I think a lot of companies and a lot of aggregators really focus on. What's the spiciest thing we can pull out? What's the thing that's going to make the most waves? Of course, we want to be influential. Of course, we want, people to see our content and get excited about it and want to share it. But we want to balance that with not putting any of our guests, any of our talent in a position where they're going to wake up in the morning and their phone's going to be blowing up being like, hold on, I didn't say that. Or I said that, but I didn't mean that. So again, I know that virality is a focus for a lot of companies and a lot of brands, and I understand why. Like the goal for everyone is the same. You want as many people to see your content as possible, but you want to do that in a positive way. You don't want to do that and again have Joel Embiid calling Draymond because he's
Yeah.
upset at the way he was portrayed.
Yeah.
That's our goal is always going to be to make sure that we do the best job with what we have and not paint anyone in a negative light or take them out of context in a way that they didn't want.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about social. It's like everyone can see it, but everyone can see it. So
Exactly.
you have to walk that line.
Absolutely.
So so when we're writing, and the series will go out in January, by the way. I just wanted to make
Okay.
sure we were ahead of schedule, so
Sounds good.
no conflicts or anything like that. But
Hmm?
writing, and we're putting this out for like radio audiences. They don't
Yeah,
have the budget for a 10-person social staff that's
sure.
working on shifts that can be everywhere at once. What would be your advice for a station, a company that's got maybe one or two people? Like, where would you start? What would you prioritize?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think that the if you have the ability to record video, let's just start there. If you have that ability, I think the easiest thing to start is going to be YouTube. It doesn't require a ton of editing. You're essentially doing the same thing as you are on audio. In, out, here is your episode. Obviously you do need some understanding of certain like SEO, making sure your titles and description are optimized in the best way for search, making sure you're creating good thumbnails. But that is all relatively easy to learn and doable from a small team. Beyond that, again, if you have the ability to do video, I would put your efforts into trying to get one really good cut per day. Focus on taking your best moment and making it as good as humanly possible. Establish your content as elite, and people will slowly trickle in. I think there's always a rush to be like, well, we're doing so much, we have to get so much content out. And like, yes, if you have the ability to, no pun intended, but in mass volume, get a ton of content out, great. But if it's a bunch of meh content, no one's going to be looking for your show. No one's going to be like, oh, I'm going to listen to that radio show now. No, I'm going to go find that podcast. I'm going to go find that YouTube channel. Really focus on those one or two moments that you can take and elevate, that'll stand out, that'll cut through. Get that out on your, on your TikToks and your Instagrams and your Twitters, and just get it to as many people as possible. Within that, and this is going to get into the voice on social, be organic. Don't try to be sensationalist. Don't try to be something you're not. Have a voice, develop a voice. It usually mirrors your talent. Doesn't have to be exactly the same, but be natural. I like the amount of times that I have these conversations with my team where it's just like they'll pitch copy for something. Like, is that how you would text your friend and tell them to watch this clip? No. Try again. So like in that same way, it doesn't need to be cookie cutter. It can be conversational. You want to engage with your audience, and being very templated is not the way to do that. Having voices, showing them high-end elite content is. So that's where I would start. Start with developing your voice, understand what your brand is, and show them the best possible version of that content. Again, as much or as often as you can, knowing that resources are, as always, an issue.
All right, awesome. All right, you got any other takes? Anything else about the social space? Is Elon going
Oh
to
man,
completely tank Twitter? Like anything else you want to add?
I could talk all day about social. I could also talk all day about Elon and X, which I actually I'll forever call it Twitter. For me,
Yeah.
it will forever be Twitter. Um, but no, I won't. I won't take up any more of your time. Other than to say that, like again, thank you so much for thinking of me and asking me to do this. And while I'm honored and I'm proud of all the work that I've done with the volume, I like the last thing that I would want to say is that I am so fortunate to be surrounded by so many talented and bought in people. And ultimately, when you've built a team like ours, success is, I don't want to say a given. Success is never a given, but we've given ourselves the best possible shot by, starting from Colin launching this years ago, all the, to hiring Logan as, the number one hire, to putting together an awesome team of absolute grinders and awesome producers, video editors, audio producers, etc., designers. Like Logan and Colin have done such a tremendous job leading us. It's made it super easy and super rewarding for someone like me to come in and just, and just kind of like crush my area of expertise, right?
Mm.
And I wish I could sit here and spend 10 minutes telling you about every single person on the team and how awesome they are. But just to suffice to say that I'm so proud of our team and so proud of the work that they put in every day, that it makes it easy for me to get up in the morning and want to keep on growing and keep on pushing forward with this, again, wild ride of the last 2 years that really feels like it's just getting started, if we're being honest. So again, thank you so much for the time, but I am but one piece in a much larger puzzle of some truly talented and amazing people.